There's a kind of energy between two people that can't be manufactured, rehearsed, or hidden. You feel it before you can describe it. That quiet, magnetic awareness of another person's presence. When someone walks into a room and you suddenly feel your focus shift, your emotions heighten, your senses sharpen a little. That's not coincidence. That's chemistry at work, not just biological, but psychological. It's the body and mind reacting to connection before logic even steps in. We call it attraction, but in truth, it's something more nuanced. It's sex presence. If presence is not just being there, it's being felt. It's when a person carries themselves with authenticity, when they're not trying to impress or perform, yet somehow they capture your attention effortlessly. The reason this happens isn't because of how they look or what they say, seat. It's because they are fully X in the moment. You feel them because they are S feeling life. They're grounded in who they are, and that groundedness becomes magnetic. Think about it. How many times have you met someone who looked great on paper, said all the right things, but something was missing? And then there's that other person. Maybe they barely said a word, but you couldn't stop thinking about them. That's the difference between superficial charm and true presence. Charm can entertain you, but presence can move you. One fades as quickly as it appears, the other lingers because it speaks directly to your emotional core. Psychologists often talk about emotional attunement, the ability to tune into another person's emotional state without words. That's what creates the spark we often can't explain. It's not about saying the perfect thing, but about being aware enough to notice. Presence requires attention, real, undivided, human attention. In a world where everyone's distracted, that kind of attention has become one of the rarest and most seductive forms of connection. And what's fascinating is that this kind of presence has nothing to do with trying. The harder someone tries to appear confident, the less connected they actually seem. Real confidence is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It radiates. It's in the way someone listens, the calmness in their body language, the steadiness in their tone. It's the feeling that they're not rushing to fill silence because they're not uncomfortable with it. Presence is felt when someone has no need to prove anything. In moments of true romantic tension, this presence becomes electric. You don't need constant conversation or physical closeness to feel it. Sometimes it's just a glance across a room, an instant where the world narrows down to just two people. It's not something you can fake because it's not about control. It's about surrender to awareness, to emotion, to the reality that something significant is unfolding beneath the surface. That's why the most powerful connections in life aren't always the loudest or the most obvious. They're the ones that exist in the quiet, where words become unnecessary and energy speaks instead. You can't chase that kind of connection, and you can't force it. You can only recognize it when it happens and be brave enough to allow it to exist without fear or pretense. Because in the end, it's not about who captures your attention. It's about who keeps it without trying. Presence doesn't demand to be noticed. It simply is. And when you encounter someone with that kind of energy, you don't just see them. You feel them. And that's the kind of feeling you don't forget. You can always tell when there's tension between two people, not because of what they say, but because of what they don't. It's in the pauses, the silences that feel charged, alive, meaningful. The truth is, when attraction runs deep, words become almost secondary. The connection is communicated in the spaces between them, in the eye contact that lasts a second too long, the breath that catches mid-sentence, the way two people instinctively move closer without realizing it. That's not coincidence. That's the subconscious revealing what the conscious mind is trying to hide. When someone is secretly drawn to you, they won't always express it through grand gestures or declarations. Instead, it shows in how their energy shifts around you. They become more aware of themselves. The way they stand, the way they speak, the way they look at you. It's as though your presence awakens a mirror in them. Their body language becomes a kind of confession. The nervous laughter, the subtle fidgeting, the sudden effort to seem composed, all these are quiet signals of emotional intensity. They don't intend to show it, but their behavior tells the truth their words conceal. That's the fascinating part of human psychology. We're constantly leaking emotion, even when we try to appear unaffected. Our nervous system doesn't lie. Micro-expressions, tone shifts, pupil dilation, even the rhythm of our breathing, they all reveal what's happening beneath the surface. When two people feel that mutual pull, their nervous systems start to assess sync. That's why being near them feels different. The energy in the space changes. It's not about proximity. It's about connection that vibrates just below awareness. But here's where it becomes even more interesting. When attraction is unspoken, both people feel that internal tug of war, the mix of desire and restraint. Part of them wants to move closer, seat, while another part fears disrupting the unspoken balance. So instead, they communicate through subtext, through jokes that carry double meaning, compliments disguised as casual remarks, or simply through the awareness that no one else in the room exists in quite the same way. It's not just emotional tension, it's psychological play. Each moment feels delicate, almost sacred, because neither person knows exactly where it might lead. And yet, this subtle tension is what makes connection so powerful. It's the space where curiosity thrives. Without mystery, attraction fades. Without distance, desire weakens. Sometimes what makes someone unforgettable isn't what's said or done, but what's left unsaid. That lingering uncertainty keeps the connection alive in your mind, even when you're apart. You replay the moments, the glances, the what-ifs, not because you're unsure of what happened, but because part of you felt something real, even if it was never voiced. This is why romantic tension matters. Not because it's comfortable, but because it's real. It reminds us that connection isn't always about clarity or control. Sometimes it's about feeling deeply, even when you can't define it. It's about learning to be okay with the unknown, to let that tension exist without needing to name it, fix it, or rush it. Because the truth is, the strongest connections aren't built in the moments of certainty. They're built in the moments of recognition. When you see someone across a room, and for just a second, both of you know something unspoken has passed between you. You don't have to say it. You just feel it. And in that feeling lies one of life's most beautiful, haunting truths. Sometimes silence says more than words ever could. You can often tell when someone feels something for you not by what they say, but by how, as present, they become in your world. When a man feels that magnetic pull, that emotional spark he can't quite explain, his attention begins to orbit around you. It's not about obsession in the unhealthy sense, but about excess focus. Suddenly, his awareness sharpens when you walk into a room. He starts noticing the little things, the way you gesture when you talk, the tone you use when you're passionate, even the changes in your mood. And it's not accidental. It's his emotional curiosity coming to life. When we're drawn to someone, we start collecting data about them. Not consciously, but instinctively. We want to understand what makes them tick. We notice how they handle challenges, how they respond to people, how they express kindness. It's our mind's way of trying to get closer without making the first move. In attraction, observation becomes intimacy. Because paying attention is one of the purest forms of connection, it says, you matter enough for me to notice. But here's the deeper truth. When someone can't stop thinking about you, it's not always because you've done something dramatic or extraordinary. Often, it's because of the S energy you carry. Your presence lingers in his thoughts because something about you disrupted his emotional rhythm. Maybe it's your authenticity, the way you're unapologetically yourself in a world full of masks. Maybe it's the quiet strength you show when things don't go your way. Whatever it is, he starts to associate you with a feeling. One that stands out from the noise of everything else in his life. And when that happens, he finds himself trying to recreate that feeling. He remembers your laugh at random moments, hears your voice when a song plays, or recalls your advice when he faces a decision. That's not coincidence. That's emotional imprinting. When a person leaves an emotional mark on us, they occupy not just our thoughts, but our internal space. It's the kind of connection that seeps into the subconscious, where logic has no control. Now, what's fascinating is that he may try to hide at it. He may act casual, even indifferent. But the truth is, genuine attraction has a way of slipping through the cracks. He might text you about something small, an inside joke, a random thought, not because it's important, but because it's an excuse to reach out. Or he may remember details you mentioned once, showing that he's been paying attention even when you thought he wasn't. That's emotional awareness disguised as nonchalance. But remember this, when a man's thoughts keep circling back to you, it's not always about romance. Sometimes it's about resonance. You've struck a chord within him that he can't easily define. It's not just physical attraction, it's psychological intrigue. You represent something that challenges, inspires, or awakens him. And when that happens, distance, distraction, or denial can't easily erase it. That's what makes emotional attraction so powerful. It transcends circumstance. It's not about possession, it's about connection. And that connection doesn't need validation to exist. You don't have to chase it or prove it. If you've ever felt that pull from someone who tries to hide it, understand this, the mind can suppress what the heart knows, but it can't forget it. So the next time you sense that energy, that quiet attention that lingers, don't second guess it. Just be aware of it. Because sometimes the most profound truths aren't the ones spoken aloud. They're the ones reflected back to you in the stillness of someone's gaze. The gaze of a person who, even without saying a word, has already told you everything. When a man feels a deep emotional connection he's not ready to express, his behavior often turns into a subtle tug of war between vulnerability and control. One of the most revealing signs of this tension is inconsistency, moments where his actions and words don't quite align. One day he's fully engaged, laughing with you, showing genuine, creating those small moments that make you feel undeniably close. The next, he seems distant, quieter, as if retreating behind a wall. And it's easy to take that personally, to assume it's disinterest or confusion. But often, it's not rejection, it's fear. When someone is genuinely drawn to you on an emotional level, it triggers more than attraction. It stirs vulnerability. And vulnerability, especially for people who aren't used to it, can feel terrifying. It challenges their sense of control. Suddenly, they care what you think. Suddenly, your approval, your opinion, your presence matter more than they expected. And that creates a kind of internal panic, because caring deeply means having something to lose. So, what does he do? He pulls back. He creates distance to test his emotional safety. It's not because he doesn't feel something. It's because he does. It's a push-pull dynamic rooted in the human instinct to protect oneself from potential pain. This is why emotional attraction can sometimes look like confusion, when in reality, it's the mind trying to build defenses against the heart's intensity. But here's where it gets deeper. This inconsistency often reveals more about how someone handles intimacy than how they feel about you. People who have been hurt before or who associate love with loss or disappointment will subconsciously self-sabotage moments of closeness. They fear that if they fully open up, they'll lose control, and that's a frightening thought. So instead of leaning in, they retreat. They go silent. They take longer to reply, or they bury themselves in distractions. But behind that distance, there's conflict, the battle between the desire to connect and the instinct to protect. This is why understanding this pattern is so important. Because when you can see this behavior for what it is, you stop internalizing it as rejection. You start to recognize that his pullback isn't about you not being enough. It's about his own emotional threshold. You become more grounded, less reactive, and instead of chasing his presence, you hold your own. And ironically, that's what often draws him back. When someone senses that you won't crumble in their absence, that your peace doesn't depend on their attention, it changes the dynamic. It tells them, you're safe here, but you're not my source of validation. And that's powerful, because emotional maturity attracts emotional maturity. So, when a man's behavior feels inconsistent, look deeper than the surface. Sometimes inconsistency isn't disinterest. It's hesitation. The silent struggle between fear and feeling. And if you find yourself in that space, caught between what he shows and what he hides, remember this. Real connection isn't built on constant reassurance. It's built on emotional awareness. When you stay calm in the midst of someone else's confusion, you give them the permission to meet you there, not out of pressure, but out of choice. Because love that lasts isn't found in the highs of passion, but in the steadiness of presence. And if he's truly drawn to you, that steadiness will call him back every single time. One of the most powerful yet understated signs of strong romantic tension is the way two people become hyper-aware of each other's presence. It's not just about proximity, it's about energy. When there's attraction layered with emotional connection, even silence feels charged. You can be across the room, not saying a word, and still feel that gravitational pull. It's as if the air itself changes when that person walks in, not because of anything they exude, but because of what your emotions recognize before your mind can explain it. This awareness shows up in the smallest ways. You might notice how he instinctively positions himself near you, even when there's no real reason to. Maybe he lingers just a bit longer in conversation or his eyes find you in a crowded space as if seeking reassurance that you're still there. These aren't deliberate acts. They're subconscious. They're the ways our bodies communicate what our words are too afraid to admit. And when that awareness is mutual, it creates an unspoken rhythm between two people. You start mirroring each other without realizing it. Gestures, tone, pace of speech. That's not coincidence. It's emotional alignment. Psychologists call this synchrony, when two people unconsciously sync their behavior because their nervous systems are in tune. It's what happens when emotional energy flows freely between you, even if neither of you has said how you feel. But here's where it becomes fascinating. That awareness is both exciting and terrifying. Because when you sense someone's presence on that level, it breaks through your emotional defenses. You can't hide behind logic or pretend you don't care. Something deeper is activated, and that's why romantic tension can feel so uncomfortable at times. It's not just desire, it's recognition. It's two people seeing themselves reflected in each other, sometimes more honestly than they've seen themselves before. And that can make people retreat. They may suddenly act distant or overly casual, pretending nothing's happening. But the truth is, they're trying to manage the emotional intensity. When you feel that kind of connection, your instinct might be to protect it or even deny it. Because you know that once it's acknowledged, things can't go back to the way they were. There's a shift, a before and after moment that changes how you experience that person. The beauty of this tension, though, is that it's a sign of potential. It means something real is trying to surface. The challenge is to not rush it, not force it, but allow it to breathe. Because when attraction is authentic, it deepens through patience, not pressure. It's not about making something happen. It's about allowing something to the sex become when you can hold that awareness without demanding resolution. You show emotional strength. You show that you can feel deeply and still remain grounded. That's the kind of energy that doesn't chase. It invites. It doesn't cling. It connects. So, when you find yourself hyper-aware of someone and you sense they feel it too, don't rush to define it or control it. Let it reveal its purpose in time. Because sometimes the tension itself is the teacher, showing you what your heart is capable of, reminding you how rare it is to truly feel something that real. And maybe that's the point, not to conquer the tension, but to understand it, see it. Because the most powerful connections are never built on certainty, but on awareness, the kind that makes you quietly whisper to yourself, something's different here. Sometimes the strongest sign of romantic tension isn't in what's said or even what's done. It's in restraint. It's in those moments when both people feel something powerful but choose not to act on it just yet. That restraint isn't avoidance, it's awareness. It's the understanding that something meaningful deserves patience, not impulsivity. And in that pause, in that silent, electric space between I want to and I'm not going to yet, something extraordinary happens. Emotional maturity takes the lead over instant gratification. You see, real connection isn't about satisfying a momentary desire. It's about sustaining an emotional current that keeps deepening over time. When two people sense that connection but choose to move with intention, they're not playing games. They're protecting something delicate. Because when the attraction is strong, it's easy to let the emotion drive everything. But restraint introduces depth. It allows both people to feel the tension without letting it consume them. That's the kind of attraction that grows instead of burns out. Because think about it. When everything is acted upon immediately, you remove the space for anticipation, and anticipation is one of the most powerful emotional experiences in human connection. It's what makes love feel magnetic rather than mechanical. Restraint creates that magnetic pull. It's the art of not giving in too soon, of letting the emotion ripen. This is why people who show control in moments of intensity often seem more attractive. They're signaling emotional stability, that they're not ruled by impulse. And deep down, that creates safety. It tells the other person, you can trust me with your emotions because I can handle mine. That's incredibly appealing because attraction without emotional safety always collapses. Seat. But attraction built on restraint and presence, that's the kind that lasts. Restraint also reveals authenticity. Because when you don't rush to get something from someone, attention, validation, or intimacy, you give both of you the chance to see what's real. You find out whether the connection is rooted in curiosity or chemistry alone. That's a truth most people avoid confronting because it requires vulnerability. Seat. It means sitting with the uncertainty of not knowing where it's heading and staying open anyway. But here's the beauty in that restraint keeps the story alive. It turns every glance, every pause, every small exchange into something layered with meaning. It reminds you that love isn't about speed, it's about significance. You start to value the depth of each interaction instead of the quantity of them. You begin to trust that what's meant to unfold will in its time. So, when you feel that pull, that unmistakable tension that seems to live between every shared silence, recognize that it's not always meant to be resolved instantly. Sometimes it's meant to teach you something, to show you what it feels like to stay open and grounded at the same time. And maybe the real power of restraint is that it allows love to reveal its truest form. Not the love that rushes, not the love that needs constant proof, but the love that grows from patience and respect. See, because the strongest romantic tension isn't about what happens next. It's about what's being built in the stillness before it does. And that's where the real connection lives. Not in the moment you give in, but in the moment you choose to wait, trusting that what's real doesn't need to be forced to be felt.